Months of protest in Belarus. An armed battle between Azerbaijan and Armenia. A violent uprising after a disputed parliamentary election in Kyrgyzstan. Tensions in these former Soviet republics have mounted despite Vladimir Putin's efforts to keep control and bring back stability. Weakened by the economic impact of the pandemic, Moscow has fewer resources to spend on the upkeep of military outposts in countries like Armenia or Kyrgyzstan, and its power in the region is waning.
Russia's dominant position is no longer really dominant, and it's increasingly challenged by regional powers.
Moscow is spending on military forces, troops in the regions that it cares about, like in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, countries of the former Soviet Union. But right now, what's priority for Russia is ensuring that it pumps money into its economy in order to keep people satisfied.
As competitors like China and Turkey are expanding their presence in the region, 30 years after the end of the Soviet Union, Russia's monopoly on power in its former territories is under threat. Russia has maintained strong relationships with former Soviet republics, and even pushed to deepen economic and military ties in recent years. Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia have been part of the Eurasian Economic Union's single market since 2015, and Russian forces are also stationed in Belarus, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan. But other countries have also invested money and increased military cooperation in that region. Turkey, for example, has thrown its military support behind Azerbaijan in the conflict with Armenia, a close Russian ally, in the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Türkiye olarak tüm kalbimizle Azerbaycan'ın topraklarını geri almak için yürüttüğü haklı mücadelesini destekliyoruz.
Russia has good relations both with Armenia and Azerbaijan, and actually sells weapons to both of these countries. And it's a way of balancing the influence in the region.
Wary of taking sides, Russia wants to play a role as mediator in the conflict and helped Armenia and Azerbaijan reach a temporary ceasefire.
Объявляется о прекращении огня с 12 часов 0 минут 10 октября 2020 года в гуманитарных целях.
But fighting has continued, and both sides are accusing each other of violating the truce agreements, highlighting the limits of Russia's power. Turkey's involvement is putting pressure on Russia to protect its Armenian ally, but analysts say Moscow wants to avoid a broader conflict.
And Russia doesn't want to get involved because it doesn't have too many resources.
In Kyrgyzstan, clashes between political factions have been driven by local conflicts and claims of rigged elections. Beyond calling it chaos, the Kremlin hasn't officially supported either party.
Надеемся, что все обойдется мирно.
Russia has taken a very kind of more relaxed, hands-off approach to the conflict in that region.
The pro-Russian president resigned days after meeting with his nationalist opponent with the mediation of Putin's senior aides. But in this country where Russia has a military base, another superpower has expanded its presence in recent years. China shares a border with Kyrgyzstan and has invested heavily in infrastructure as part of its initiative known as Belt and Road.
Russia is very aware of the kind of influence that Beijing could have in Central Asia and in a country like Kyrgyzstan. Russia can take this laid-back approach, but it realizes that it still needs to show that it cares about Kyrgyzstan, because the instant it shows that it does not care, China could easily move in and have more of an influence there than Russia would care for it to have.
In Belarus, it's a different story. Protests have continued for months, but that doesn't mean Russia isn't in control. President Alexander Lukashenko is holding onto power despite accusations of a rigged election. As pressure has mounted on his presidency, he's accepted Russia's demands to discuss new military bases and trade agreements, even as Belarus already relies heavily on Russia for crude oil.
Руководство России и Беларуси заинтересовано в том, чтобы придать дополнительный импульс развитию межрегиональных связей.
In Belarus, short to medium term, Russia is actually winning because with the regime being deeply wounded, it looks like Belarus moving much closer towards Russia.
On the other hand, Moscow has avoided expressing clear support for Lukashenko, suggesting that it doesn't want to estrange Belarusians, some of whom have called for the European Union to intervene.
The Kremlin's very conscious of that. By siding with Mr. Lukashenko, Russia actually risks alienating the Belarusian people. And that's a huge risk for Russia.
So rise of regional powers and the lure of European Union in its west, China in the east, and then Turkey in South Caucasus is really a daunting challenge for Russia.
After 2 decades of aggressive military campaigns in countries like Georgia and Ukraine, Putin's approach to foreign policy in Russia's backyard has shifted. As he prepares to potentially remain in power until 2036, the Russian president is himself under pressure to revitalize his country's waning economy while fighting the pandemic.
President Putin has seen protests in the Far East. People are dissatisfied. People have lost their jobs because of coronavirus. And he needs to show his population that the priority is here at home. And the priority isn't pumping money into foreign escapades.